Helldiver, are you ready to spread democracy? Are you ready to defend Super Earth? Are you ready to exterminate these communist bots? To harvest that precious bug oil? Because scenes like these are happening all over the galaxy, and we need you. If you haven't caught on yet, this game is very much tongue-in-cheek, and it knows it too. It's very much reminiscent of Starship Trooper the movie, not the book. It's easy to notice if you take a closer look at the game. I mean, the tutorial doesn't have a single person in it, it's all automated. The terms and conditions are ridiculous, like if you read them, you're going to be terminated. The opening sequence uses in-game guns, except for the fact that they're missing magazines. Because they're not real Helldivers, they're actors trying to get people to join the Helldivers. On top of the aesthetic, the core gameplay loop is just so good. It's a 4-player PvE co-op shooter, and apparently that's what everyone wanted to play, with the game shooting up to an eye-watering 458,000 concurrent players, managing to sell over 12 million copies in the first 12 weeks, making it Sony's 7th highest grossing game ever published. However, importantly for this story, without PC players, it wouldn't have even ranked in the top 20, but we'll get back to that. Not only did Arrowhead manage to get a massive player spike at the beginning, but they've also been able to retain that player base, holding on to an average 100,000 odd players, which is wild. This game had all the makings of being a flash in the pan before dropping their players down to 40k from people simply getting bored and tired of the game. But instead, they've managed to keep those players, and I think they've done this in two key ways: story and a content drip. So perhaps one of the most interesting elements of this game is the mission select menu. So if I wanted to question my life choices, I might load up a game of Overwatch. The game has no larger effect on the series as a whole, with the exception of SR, the game's competitive points. But even then, it's not like whoever won the Overwatch League dictated the narrative of the game at large. Here though, you're fighting a galactic war, where players have to take and defend planets, as directed either by major orders set by the game master Joel, making it much more akin to something like D&T, and the collective player's zeitgeist that rises up from everybody looking at the same data. This major order system has done two key things to the player base. First, it's primed the audience for community action, which will become important later on. And the second is the introduction of story. Arrowhead Studios have done something I haven't seen, which is they actively deny putting content into their games. This whole fog of war concept, they've managed to tie a constant drip feed of new content to player actions through this major order system. And while there are exceptions like planetary environments, the rest feel earned. Even if the mechs were always going to come, even if it was a false choice, it feels earned. The new eradication missions, the giant AT-ATs, the quasar cannon, the flying bugs, and more. So, we have a game that's a smash hit, beloved by a community, is rated very positive on Steam, a 9 out of 10 on IGN. Sony has caught lightning in a bottle. They have a money printer in the palm of their hands. But if that's all there was, this wouldn't be a video. For what happens next is a series of completely bizarre business decisions. On Friday, the 3rd of May at 1:33 AM British summertime, a post was made to the Helldivers 2 Steam page telling users that the grace period would expire, and as of the 6th of May, all new Helldivers would be required to connect their Steam accounts to the PlayStation Network, PSN, and current players will see a mandatory login from the 30th of May. It was only due to technical issues that this wasn't the case at launch. You might be confused. Why haven't I seen this before? But to be fair, ever since day one, there's been a little text box on the Steam storefront saying requires third-party account, PlayStation Network, and the reasoning behind this? Sony said that account linking gave players an extra level of security. It allows them to uphold their values by banning people who grief in-game, while also giving those people a right to appeal when they got unbanned. Now, to be fair, when I said smash hit earlier, I meant it. This game was far more successful than originally anticipated. It's why we saw some users experiencing wait times of 6 hours. It's why one of the first updates, 1.005, we saw them increasing max server size. The CEO even commented on the situation, saying, quote, that the wait times should be more bearable now, end quote. So, that part is true, but the rest, well... Now, this PSN announcement was not met with a positive response. We started seeing some negative reviews coming in because of the simple fact that it's annoying. I mean, for every other big game, it feels like you need to create a third-party account. And for players that have been playing a game for months already, it's annoying. You can point to server issues all you want, but it doesn't change the underlying player experience. But if that was the only problem, then sure, they would have gotten a few negative reviews, but it started to get a lot worse when people realized that the PSN network is not available worldwide. In fact, it's only available in 73 countries. This is one of the reasons why I don't believe Sony. If the plan was always to connect the PSN system, why did they wait until the 5th of May to delist 177 countries? These players have been playing the game for months now. If this was always the plan, then why make it available to them? Well, that's a bit shit, but at least everyone else will be able to create an account for free, right? Well, no. It turns out, even in the permissible 73 countries, you can't just create an account online. Now, don't get me wrong, this is the case in some countries like the US or UK, but not in all 73. In some countries, a PSN account can only be created via a PS4 or PS5. In an interesting PR decision, this also includes the region of Ukraine, as confirmed by this email to the PlayStation Network support. So, now, to play your 35 quid PC game, you either have to purchase a £119 PS4 or £385 PS5. This, unsurprisingly, prompted more negative reviews. Now, for those of you who watch a lot of YouTube, 3 letters might be pushed to the front of your mind. VPN. This is what all the YouTubers push, to change your location. Surely, this is the perfect scenario. Now, while I would raise an eyebrow at the fact that a user who has bought a game and has been playing the game for months now will be locked out of said game unless they use third-party software, at least we have a solution. However, it seems like using a VPN in the game results in massive FPS drops. Okay, sure, but it gets worse. According to Steam's subscriber agreement, you are not allowed to use a VPN for any reason. Doing so could get your Steam account locked permanently. Okay, fine. So we create a fresh account, buy the game, and then use a VPN to create a PSN account in an allowed region, and then we're all good, yeah? Well, except for the fact that we're getting utterly ridiculous, there is still a chance the PSN will detect that you're playing from a non-allowed region by the IP address. The VPNs use known IP addresses. If they have it on file, they might just ban your account out of hand. If you have inconsistent location data, i.e. you're traveling between the UK and Ukraine in minutes, they might ban you, as well as other methods of detection. What makes this all the more frustrating is that Sony updated the writing on the PlayStation Store. In the frequently asked questions section on the PlayStation website, it asks, do I have to sign in to PSN to play a PlayStation game on PC? It used to say, signing into PSN is optional when playing a PlayStation game on PC. However, following the Helldivers 2 post, Sony updated it to some PlayStation games and features may require you to sign in or link an account for PSN. Okay, given all these drawbacks, does it actually make the game safer? If Sony's goal is really player protection, what advantages do you gain from connecting to the PSN system? As far as I can tell, you get absolutely nothing. Setting aside the fact that if this did actually work, then we wouldn't see as many PlayStation cheaters as we do. When you link your Steam account to a third-party website, the only thing they get is your unique Steam ID. Sony can then tie that to your PSN account for better moderation. And while Sony can ban you server-side via the PSN ID, they can't ban your Steam or revoke game license. They simply prefer the PSN system for management consistency. All these things combined led to a lot of downvotes. We saw it turn from very positive to overwhelmingly negative. But if it was these gameplay choices alone, we might not have seen such a reaction. Let's talk about the Hello there, editing me here. Since writing and recording this video, the Helldivers CEO has stepped down and is now the COO. So, for the rest of this video, when I refer to CEO, I mean this guy and not this guy. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled content. One thing that Helldivers has been getting a lot of praise for was how transparent their CEO had been throughout the game's launch, directly responding to user suggestions on Twitter, like when he was asked whether or not they would introduce PvP to Helldivers 2. Spoilers, he said no. The CEO didn't really do anything during the massive spike of negative reviews. He made a comment saying, ouch, right in the review score. Well, I guess it's warranted. Sorry everyone for how all this has transpired. I hope we will make it up and regain trust by providing a continued great game experience. I just want to make great games. Very polite, neutral, doesn't really take a stance on the matter, as well as going on to confirm in a separate statement that while PSN was not in the original agreement when they signed the contract with Sony, it is a requirement from the publisher and it was deemed important by PlayStation to have it. It was only implemented a couple months before release, and when servers exploded on launch, they deactivated the feature, and now PlayStation required them to re-enable it. And though there were concerns there would be backlash, they went ahead anyways. However, they are now talking about it again. But I want to talk about their community managers, because we got an array of different responses. From some privating their accounts, I imagine due to the level of harassment they were getting, and while not appropriate, it is expected, to saying that they were caught off guard, how they don't have any information, and that it wasn't their decision, which is wild if true and Sony decided to change this without informing the studio. Although, I want to talk about one guy in particular, Splits, a community manager. While his initial response was certainly an interesting technique, telling a player base to just take a couple of minutes out of their day to enter an email and password and forget about it, or just downvote the game, only to double down and say, I thought you were refunding and leaving, which is a fair take to be honest if people keep annoying you. He went on to change his opinion, saying he was unaware of how many countries didn't have access to PSN, only to actively encourage the player base to give negative reviews and refund the game on multiple occasions in order to give Arrowhead more pull in the negotiations. Needless to say, he is now an ex-community manager. Now, let's talk about the final element of this saga.
Look familiar?
In the face of immense backlash, with overwhelmingly negative reviews, with this importantly manifesting in player numbers dropping off over the weekend, Steam granting refunds for players with large numbers of hours, Sony walked it back, saying that PSN will no longer be required and that they are still learning about what's best for PC players. The Helldivers CEO responded saying, firstly, I'm impressed by the willpower of the Helldivers 2 community and your ability to collaborate. Secondly, I want to thank our partners and friends at PlayStation for quickly and effectively making the decision to leave the PSN linking optional. We together want to set a new standard of what a live game is and how developers and community can support each other to create the best game experience. The community, unsurprisingly, was very happy about this situation and began Operation Cleanup, a new major order set by the player zeitgeist to change all those negative reviews on Steam. And it worked to some degree, rising that overwhelmingly negative review to mixed. There's an interesting speech by a developer in which he talks about the transitive property of goodwill and how a developer can make deposits of goodwill before choosing to spend it. Sony did have some goodwill with this audience, but instead of trying to spend it, they decided to burn it. My hottest take about this whole situation is that from a business point of view, they were right. The boffins at Sony were right to try and drive players towards PSN. Console sales are down 40% this year, and while their old rival Microsoft is making headway in the PC market with their Xbox Game Pass, their alternative, PlayStation Plus, only allows PC players at the highest levels of subscription, and so naturally Xbox are going to have more people. And as we move towards a less platform restrictive style of gaming, with console exclusives seeming to become a thing of the past, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sony trying to directly sell their PC games. And in there lies the problem. Sat at the top of a mountain lies old Gabe, with a 75% market share of the global market. Epic spends hundreds of millions of dollars every year giving away free games to try and steal some of that percentage away. Hell, a separate company have even launched an antitrust lawsuit against Valve, which brings us right back to the boffins. Sony is a publicly traded company. They announce their PSN numbers, and as I said at the start, Helldivers 2 is their 7th highest grossing game ever published, but without PC players, it wouldn't have even ranked in the top 20. I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of PC players don't have a PSN account, and they saw a chance to boost their PSN numbers, and they could have done it, except they went about it in the worst possible way. This hardline approach was never going to be received well. I just don't think they expected it to be that bad. Or, if there was a stink, it would just blow over. But there are so many ways in which they could have introduced this policy to get users to either create or attach their PSN account. I mean, give the players a major order that they couldn't win. Say their failure led to the automatons injecting a virus into the cyber mainframe, and that players needed to verify the integrity of the ship's mainframe by attaching their Steam accounts to a PSN account. Throw in a cape and 500 premium credits, and you would have had players chomping at the bit to connect their account. Hell, if you really want to go overboard, say that the verification allows players to change the density of pigments of the ship or some other science BS, and give players the ability to change the accents on their ship. Sure, there might have been some pushback, but this? No. We have seen player numbers drop off after the original announcement. I am not smart enough to do an analysis to differentiate between general player decay and those that jumped because of Sony. But as it stands, despite stating that they have walked back this decision, Sony have yet to relist the game in countries where they delisted them. And while some fans were originally blaming Steam, an employee for the company has stated it looks like the game is not available on Steam right now for specific regions as decided by the publisher. This information is all we have right now, end quote. With the Arrowhead CEO commenting that they want this game to be available everywhere. And that seems to be the takeaway from this situation. Sony said they're walking it back, but on the 10th of May, Sony delisted the game further in Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, bringing the total up to 180. Then, on the 16th of May, they relisted it in 5 territories. And I say territories because it was American Samoa, Guam, Northern Marine Islands, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. Sony have also stated that account linking will remain optional. That brings us right back to the mission select menu. Those major orders. I'm not sure if the community's action would have been so drastic if the game they played had not primed them for community action. We have had an alternative example of the Ghost of Tsushima, but that player base does not seem to have revolted like the Helldiver player base did. Although there is a key difference. While they did delist the game from a bunch of countries, this happened before the game's released. Even though some people had pre-ordered the game, they could easily be made whole. But that player base did not revolt. So I imagine this is what we see going forward. Sony trying to get PC players to create PSN accounts to bolster their numbers, even if that means restricting the game from certain areas in the world. Either way, if you've liked this video, why not hit that like and subscribe button? If you want to learn about Apple's worst month, why not click here? Either way, bye.